We are now under 2 months away from the launch of the iPhone 17 series, where we'll no longer have rumors to talk about, but actual announcements. I consider them rumors until Apple officially announces these things, but other channels like to use the term confirmed in the title and thumbnail, but not around here because we're honest and paid substantially less, because if I use confirmed, we'd probably get 4 times the views, but y'all don't care about that. Let's begin. So here's a handy, nifty little trick for you guys to all remember in case you're wondering, when do the new iPhones officially launch? Well, Apple could always surprise us if there's a last-minute emergency, but the normal schedule of things that has worked pretty successfully for us over the past few years is the second Monday of September. Occasionally it's a Tuesday, but in more recent history it's fallen on a Monday, which means iPhone 17 event is likely to be on September 8th this year. And from that date, you can actually figure out quite a bit more. So if you add a couple of days from there, on September 12th at 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern, that's when Apple will likely have pre-orders open for the iPhone 17 series, and we'll all be able to turn our Apple cards bright yellow that morning and hopefully go back to sleep before class or work starts. And then a week from that date, which is September 19th, that's when all of the Apple sheep start lining up outside the Apple stores. The Apple employees will start applauding, and your 2-week return window will start from the 19th as well. Just enough time for you to get all your social media pictures and YouTube unboxings done and return it in a timely fashion. But in case you haven't seen a recent video on this, I just wanted to kind of run down all of the biggest changes with the iPhone 17 series that are noteworthy, and in my opinion, this is not a major upgrade year. I think next year's going to be a lot more exciting and interesting, but especially when it comes to the cheapest flagship of the bunch, the iPhone 17, rumored to pretty much look identical to the 16. Maybe slightly thinner bezels, but pretty slight. Most recent reports are saying it's making the jump to the A19 chip as usual. Same dynamic island, same camera system on the back, although they are making the jump to Qi 2.2, which means you should be able to get 25-watt wireless charging even with third-party chargers now. But aside from that, that's about it. I mean, there's talk that these displays are going to be capable of going up to 120 hertz, but they're not dynamic refresh rate adjustment panels like we have on the Pros, which means regular iPhone 17 probably not going to have an always-on display, and probably still going to be 60 hertz out the box, and there might be certain settings or options you can play around with to get it up to 120 hertz, but it will come at the cost of battery life because this is not, again, variable refresh rate panel. So maybe when you go into game mode, it ups it to 120 FPS, or maybe when you're connected to power or charging, then you get 120 hertz, but don't be surprised if out the box this phone has 60 hertz, and probably still USB 2 speeds on that Type-C connector. Overall, not a very exciting upgrade, but what's slightly more interesting is the redesign coming to the 17 Pro and the 17 Pro Max. For one, this is the first time in many years that the higher-end iPhones will not be using stainless steel or titanium, because these phones are getting even more chunk than the 16 Pros. They're switching to aluminum to try to keep the overall weight on these phones down, and couple that with these new redesigned camera visors on the back, which are simply taking up more space for some reason. I don't even think it's to help the cameras. It might just be to show off the upcoming slimmer iPhone Air. We'll talk about that in a second, but the biggest changes with the 2 Pros, same screen size as before, 6.3 and 6.9 inches. Pretty much the same displays, no changes with the dynamic island, but I would say the most noteworthy rumors are they're switching to a 48 megapixel sensor on the telephoto lens, which is a tetra prism, not quite the same periscope lens that Samsung uses, but they should have better zoom than ever before on an iPhone. And there's also talk of the front-facing cameras making the jump to 24 megapixels, which they are currently 12. So slightly sharper selfies and slightly sharper zoom when it comes to the cameras. Battery life should be better, as the rumors are also suggesting saying this is the first year we're gonna have a 5,000 milliamp hour iPhone, but that's just in the physical capacity. There's a chance that the real world battery life doesn't change all that much because they are also upping the silicon on the inside to A19 Pro chips, which are supposedly rocking 12 gigabytes of unified memory. But coming to the fourth iPhone in the lineup, which is probably the most interesting one, although likely not one the tech community is going to be that interested in buying, Apple is dropping the Plus naming of the iPhone again. Rest in peace, iPhone 8 Plus, you were awesome. But yeah, also the 16 Plus is not getting a direct replacement because the 17 Air is supposed to be the thinnest iPhone of the bunch, but with a lot of compromises on getting that razor thin design, which should be the thinnest iPhone of all time. Yes, even thinner than an iPhone 6, which bent very easily, but Ming-Chi Kuo, I guess, is saying that they might use titanium on the 17 Air. Not on the Pros, interestingly enough, but maybe that helps with the structural rigidity, and it also will still have a glass back, so that also helps keep it more rigid and solid compared to the iPhone 6, which, yes, did have bendgate concerns, but it was an entirely aluminum enclosure, and also currently the thinnest iPhone ever made. So, what other compromises were made for the 17 Air to get this thin? Well, for one, you're only getting one camera on the back, probably the same sensor that you find on a 16E, even though this is going to be a lot more expensive than a 16E, and for whatever reason, they had to realign the front-facing camera on the dynamic island. Don't think that's going to make a noticeable difference. The island should be the same size, but camera is just going to be on the left instead of the right now. Also, there's talk that the 17 Air is not going to have proper stereo speakers, so the external speakers might not be as great. Also, battery life is a major concern, of course, because they can't get that big of a battery in a design this small, so it sounds like they're going to be using the same modem that they made for the 16E, the C1 chip, also in the 17 Air in order to get more hours of screen time out of a very small battery, but keep in mind the 16E also had a much larger physical battery to boost its juice, so the C1 chip I don't think is going to help the efficiency all that much, but also the C1 chip doesn't have as many wavelengths available when it comes to the 5G spectrum, so cellular speed's also going to be slightly worse, probably not that noticeable to the everyday person, really only comes up with millimeter wave performance and that kind of thing, but yes, that new C1 chip we saw a few months ago, that is not coming to the rest of the iPhone 17 lineup, that's supposed to be just coming to the Air, and of course, because it's going to have a lot of new marketing and branding around it, and I'm sure this will be the poster iPhone that they brag about in all of the ads, there's a chance that this might finally be the year that the iPhone price goes up. Now, we've been saying that every year for the past 5 years, and so far it hasn't really happened. I mean, the Pro Max got a little bit more expensive, but they kind of just eliminated the base storage option to compensate, but with all of the tariff craziness going on this year, and with the US dollar weakening and weakening, I feel like this year in particular, there's a pretty strong case to be made that price hikes could apply across the board. Regular iPhone 17 could be $900, 17 Air could be $1,000, and then the Pros might start at $1,100 or $1,200. I hope I'm wrong, but I like to just prepare everybody and say this could be the year. Maybe they try to compensate for it by upping the default storage to 256 gigs across the board, maybe even give the Pros 512 gigs, but if we hear more information about that, I'll report on it as we get closer. But that covers all of the main attractions of Apple's next event. They also tend to refresh Apple Watches at these events, although really hasn't been much rumored for an Apple Watch Series 11. There's been a little bit of talk of the Apple Watch Ultra 3rd generation just getting a little bit better connectivity, like 5G support or the ability to communicate with satellites directly, kind of like our iPhones do, but don't expect any kind of giant redesigns or even that many new health sensors. It might just be slightly faster chip and slightly brighter display, and they call it a day. There's also been some talk of AirPods Pro 3 launching at this event, but there's not been a lot of talk on what AirPods Pro 3 are supposed to rock. I mean, they might change the charging case to be more in line with AirPods 4, where the little indicator light completely disappears when off, and maybe the pairing button gets replaced with a capacitive invisible button. But aside from adding heart rate sensors, which we saw on the Powerbeats Pro, they might do that on AirPods Pro 3, but I don't think that's a super great reason to go out and buy them, especially when you can find them so cheap on Amazon. AirPods are very cheap to buy through Amazon. Don't buy them through Apple. But what other things are you guys looking forward to at Apple's next September event? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.